Welcome everyone. Thanks for hopping on and welcome to another episode of the Reluctance podcast. Today we have with us a special guest. We have Christina Palermo. Christina is a Scottsdale and Phoenix Metro real estate professional known for her disciplined systems, consistent lead generation, and strong follow-up. She's born and raised on Long Island, New York, and she began her career in healthcare, earning a dual undergraduate degrees in biology and chemistry and human biology, along with a doctorate in chiropractic before retiring from practice. Christina entered real estate in 2012, starting in multifamily and apartment sales before transitioning into residential. She runs a highly systemized solo business focusing on circle prospecting, open houses, geographic farming, and expired listings with a strong base of investor clients. Her philosophy is simple. In any market, mastering fundamentals, lead generation, and follow-up drives consistent results. Christina, thank you so much for joining us. We're so excited to have you here.
Thank you. I appreciate being here.
I'd love to hop in because I feel like it's not common that I hear from somebody's transitions from chiropractic practices into real estate. So what inspired the change?
It's a long story, but that was my chosen profession for 17 years. And then the healthcare system changed and I had some health challenges and it just ended up not being practical anymore. And so I felt like it was time to change it up a little bit. The insurance companies had changed things and it was just, really a struggle to keep things going the way they were. So I had a big decision to make and I don't even remember how it came down, but somebody said to me, why don't you get into real estate? You love people and you really like to go get it. And I thought, oh, okay. And I really didn't have any idea about what I was getting myself into. But I know when I was practicing, I always loved, trying to find new patients and educate them. And it was a hunt, and it's, that's kind of how it happened. And I took the real estate exam and again, I had no idea what I was getting into. And then I stumbled onto commercial real estate. That was not planned, but I did that for a couple of years and then transitioned over to residential. And that's mainly what I do now.
And how did your healthcare background shape the way you serve clients today?
Oh my gosh. Well, when you walk into a treatment room, you don't know what you're going to deal with. And you have to be very neutral and very open and just deal with what's there. You have to be able to deliver good news and bad news without being, you have to be very neutral and nonchalant because you don't want to scare people. So, you deal with a lot of different personalities and you don't know how people react to things. And that's the same thing with real estate. I mean, you really never know what you're dealing with a person until you get deep into the transaction and then you start to see what's happening because it's a stressful situation. You never know. Everything's all fun in the beginning and then sometimes it gets a little tense and you have to be able to manage that. So nothing really rattles me. It's just human emotion and it's normal and you just have to not take it on personally. It's hard. Sometimes I do because you feel for people, but you just have to, you have to maintain your composure and get them through it and help them and support them in doing whatever it is that needs to be done for them.
I love that. I feel like you're in our Facebook group, so I get to see some of your comments pretty frequently. And it's really interesting to get to see like how you've grown over time, and especially when you give advice that you learned from your beginning to the end, and hearing your story about people talking about you always being a go-getter, which obviously translates well to being a real estate agent. What early lessons did you learn that helped you build consistency in your business?
Oh boy, obviously we all wish we knew then what we know now, but coming from the commercial world, there's nothing to do other than cold call because you can't do an open house. You can't knock on somebody's building door. You can't go anywhere. You just have to talk to people. So I learned very early on that was really all you could do. So getting on the phones and making, 50 calls a day, that kind of made me realize that that's what this business was about. And I didn't know that's what this business was about going into it. I don't think anybody does, but it really helped me realize that if you don't do something, you're not going to get anything. And it becomes very apparent very quickly that you have to lead generate no matter what you're comfortable with. It doesn't matter what you do, you just have to do it. And I think that's what I learned early on from that. And you have to stay in touch with people because they slip through the cracks, as we all know.
At what point did you realize the fundamentals would always outperform trends?
You know, I think from the very beginning, because especially as you're a new agent, and you know, I'm not a new agent anymore. I mean, I've been doing this since 2012. But I think when things get weird or you get off track, there's always this inherent feeling, and I catch myself and I go, what am I doing? Like, am I running off for the next shiny new object, or why am I getting off track? Is what is happening? And when that happens, it always pulls me back into the basics, which is, block the time off, turn the phone off, silence the phone, make your calls, do your open house, door knock, whatever it is you do. If people are into social media or they pay for lead, I don't know, whatever it is that people do, you have to do it. And it's the only thing that's going to project you forward. Whenever I've gotten off track, I've always pulled myself back in or listened to a seminar or a podcast, and they always inadvertently say the same thing. Go back to the basics of what has worked for you and do it. But that's the key. You got to do it.
Yeah.
And you have to follow up. So, you can make all these calls and you can do your open houses and you can generate, but you also have to have a follow-up plan, because if you don't stay in front of those people, you've just wasted all that time. So I feel very strongly about that. I hate to admit it. It's true, but it's a fact. There's no way around it.
Unfortunately. I'd love to dive into that a little bit. What systems keep you and your buyer and your seller, what keeps that process predictable for you?
I'm probably going to keep repeating, but to be predictable and to know that there's stuff, you have to have stuff in your pipeline. You have to have people in your pipeline. So you constantly have to add to your database, and you constantly have to follow up to nurture those leads, because they are going to do something. They are going to transact business at some point. And if you're not in front of them, they're going to go with whoever is in front of them. Not always, but, most of the time. So, again, whatever it is that you do, I do a lot of circle prospecting. I do a lot of open houses. I used to door knock heavily. I have so much business from door knocking. I have always made calls. I love circle calls. I like old expireds. These are the things that fill the database. So you have to fill the database, you have to nurture it. And if you do that consistently, and what I mean by that is, time block, we all don't want to hear it, but, time block the time and stick to it. That's the hard part, especially as you get more, advanced. Like, there was a point last year, I carried 10 listings, and it was a lot, and it was really hard for me to focus and make those calls in the morning. But even if I just did like 9 to 10 or 9 to 11, at least I got some calls in, because, as the day goes on, it happens, the chaos comes. And at least you could say, I've already made 15 calls or 20 calls or 2 calls. It doesn't matter, but you've done something. But if you don't, then that's where the predictability gets lost. And I think that's what happens to agents, especially new agents, is they finally get a deal or a couple of deals and they stop and they just focus on that deal because they're so focused on getting the closing. And then they forget that you're starting your business over if you keep doing that. Every time you have a closing, now you're starting over again. Well, I don't want to do that anymore, because I know it's draining, and it's physically draining, it's mentally draining, and then you have this kind of paycheck, and that's not fun for anybody. And I think that's what messes people up and that why they want to get out of the business is because they're just hit or miss. But if you would just do the kind of discomfort things first thing in the morning, just get them done, just be done with it. And it'll keep going.
I love that. I know that you are not on a large team structure. So other than time blocking, what are some other things that help you to be able to stay organized and have that structure, to be able to get the things that you need done throughout the day?
Well, honestly, I give myself the morning time. Like, sometimes I get up at 5, and I do whatever I do for myself. If there's some stuff that absolutely has to get out, I'll get that out. And then I always mark off till about 11 to make my calls, because my database, my CRM will tell me who needs to be called that day. So that's a minimum. And then if I can add in circle prospecting or, calling around open houses, whatever it is I'm going to do. And then I try to schedule the appointments for later in the day, or certain calls where I have to make an appointment with a client to call. So it's really just, and I try to stick to what I'm good at. Like, I don't try to be a social media guru in the middle of my day, because I'm not. And I'm not going to be anytime soon. That's something that I would pay somebody to do. But, I wouldn't pay somebody to make my calls. And that's just me, but I'm only one person. So I kind of have to keep it to what I know has worked in the past, and I'll tweak things, but I won't completely change a system overnight, because if something's working, use it. But if it's not, then I would say, adjust it a little bit. But I usually try to give something that I implement at least 3 months to see if there's a payoff or if it's working or not. I hear this from a lot of new agents. Oh, I tried that and it didn't work. I sent a mailer and it didn't work. Okay, well, you sent one mailer. You need to be in front of people 7 or 8 times before they, we just had the Red X seminar last week. I forget, it was
Exactly.
somebody, I forget who it was, but that was basically what they said. And it's true. You need to be in front of somebody 7 times if you're going to do mailers or, something as far as farming. And so I think that's where we have a little bit of impatience, and, certain things need certain amount of time, but I just try to stay in my lane of what I know works for me. And what works for me doesn't work for everybody. And, my practices might seem prehistoric to some people, but, I'm in Arizona. It's nice out. If I'm feeling like I want to go bang on some doors, I'll go knock on doors, because I know if I go door knocking for an hour and a half, or I make calls for an hour and a half, I'm going to get 5 people in my database. It's the bottom line. That's how it works. That's my numbers. And sometimes I don't want to do that. And I really don't do it much anymore. But, sometimes I'm like, well, why would I drive somewhere when I can pick up the phone and speed dial with the dialer and hit, twice as many people and still get the same turnout, So it just matters of what you're in the mood to do and whatnot. So that's kind of how I approach it. But I don't randomly go to a seminar and say, oh, I'm going to implement this person's system. That's their system. That's not my system. I'm not going to change my whole thing. And then now I'm starting over 3 months from now because it doesn't work for me because they're on a big team and I'm not, so you kind of have to just look at it that way. I think that's what works for me.
I love that. It sounds like circle prospecting is a core pillar for you. What makes it so effective?
Oh my gosh, like what wouldn't make it effective? Well, it's the way you use it. So people think, oh yeah, you just pull a bunch of random numbers out. No, that's not what I do. So, I always carry, I'm a listing agent. I'm very listing heavy. So I always, before I do an open house, I don't just go out there and hang up signs and throw it in the MLS and pray that people come. It's an opportunity. So you always want to call around your listings, always. I mean, because I remember this from like Real Estate 101 when I was a newbie, where they said, when you have a listing in a neighborhood, notice 2 or 3 signs will go up shortly after. So somebody else is going to sell. Now, if that's a proven fact, I didn't make it up. I've heard it over and over from different brokerages. Why would you not believe that? And why would you not listen to that? So my feeling is any listing I get, before it goes live, I schedule an open house, usually for a Saturday, and from usually not past Wednesday, like Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, I'm calling at least 100 doors around that house. I put a circle around it, and it's a very simple call. And, I just invite the neighbors to the open house. Do I think they're going to buy the house? No, but I know that one of them is going to be a seller. That's how I look at open houses. They're an opportunity to find sellers. Yes, you want to sell the house, but let's face it doesn't always happen that way. And you need to use those properties to get you more business and to draw. And way to do that is to call people, invite them to the open house and say, hey, we have a new listing in your neighborhood. I'd love your feedback. Everything that sells in the neighborhood could potentially have an effect on the value of your home. You may want to come check it out. Would that be something you'd like to do? And they say yes. And then if I say, it's also fun to snoop in other people's houses. Well, now they feel like they have permission to come and snoop. And they literally walk in the door and say, oh, I'm coming to snoop. I live down the road. You invited me. Like, they're afraid to come. So invite them. And chances are, in my experience, is that if you talk to somebody on the phone and then they show up at your open house, they want to do something. They're checking you out. And it's happened so many times to me. And, by then you've gotten a phone call. I've already done a mailer. I usually mail around the first open house, and I just take that call list, the circle call list, and in Geo-Leads, there's a DIY section where I just crank out, 100 invites to the open house, get them out quickly. And now you've got a letter out, you've got a phone call, and they show up at your open house. Tell me they're not going to do something. They're going to give you their email address, and they're going to tell you their whole story, and you're going to follow up with them like a mad person, and you will get that business. So that's one thing I do at Circle Prospecting.
I love that. I think that's so clever. One agent I talked to a while back talked about how with open houses specifically, he'd call around and say like, oh, I'm listing this property, and I just wanted to call and ask if you have any questions about buying, selling, or investing in real estate. And he said that was like the golden ticket for him.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd love to know for you and your open house strategy, what other things create listing opportunities other than just that circle prospecting?
Well, if I'm on the phone with somebody and they, I don't script people, but I've been doing this a long time. I have all the scripts in my head, so I know the lead questions to ask. So if I do get them on the phone and I do invite them to the open house, I try to continue the conversation and say, hey, how long have you been in the neighborhood? That kind of thing. What are your plans? But I don't go through the list and sound scripted, because nobody wants to be scripted anymore. And if they say, I'm thinking about doing something, I have like a pre-listing kit that I have, and it's basically, the selling process that a title company can put together. And then I have a brochure about myself and how I run my business and how I sell properties. So I'll bring that with me, and I throw some swag in there, like a candle, a pen, or whatever. If there's a lender with me, I'll put their stuff in, and I put a little Post-it note on it, and it's sitting by the door when they get there. So it just further solidifies it when they come in. And there's always one that comes. And it may not be now business, but it could be business a year from now. But I don't care. That's okay, because once I figure it out, I just put them into my CRM and stay in front of them. And then also what I do after an open house is if I get their address and their phone number or their email, which is always the goal. If I get their address, I'll send them a handwritten card the next day. Nice to meet you at the open house. If you have any questions or if there's anything at all I can do for you, give me a call. Or if I've promised them something like setting them up on a search or something, I'll call them and say, hey, I set you up on the search. You always try to offer something so you have reason to call back. So that's pretty much what I do with the open houses per se. And I do it every time, because if you're calling out of Geo-Leads and you're done, and then you go do an open house the next week, the list picks up where you are. So you can go back to that list and call the remainder of the people if you haven't gotten through your whole call list. That's how I do it.
I love that. I know you work with several different lead types. When you go into your database every day, how do you decide who to call? How do you prioritize your prospecting?
Okay, so I always start with, and again, I don't know if this is right or wrong. It just works for me. My CRM will tell me every day who's due for a call. And I don't always trust myself to get in there. So I put it in a paper planner as well. Like if I know I have a hot lead that needs to be called next Tuesday, I'm writing it in there too, so that I'm not missing out on anything. So that's pretty much what I do first. So maybe there might be 5 or 6 people I have to call. And then I'll say, okay, if I'm done with that, then, I'm not going to just do that for half an hour. I have, another hour and a half to do something. So I really, honestly, truly just call based on how I feel. Like if I'm having a call reluctance day, which we all do, I'm not calling expireds. I might go, okay, I may not be able to handle expireds today, but I can handle old expireds, and I'll pull a list. Like I have a list right now that I'm trying to work through, and it's 3 months ago, up to 3 months old. So I'll just start working through that list for an hour and a half. Or if I'm doing an open house, like I'm going to be doing an open house on one of my listings Saturday, I don't call those on a Tuesday. I usually call those on a Thursday or Friday, so it's fresh in their head. So I'll put that off until Thursday or Friday. But in the meantime, got to do something. So if I'm not going and doing an open house, I need to get on the phone. So that's pretty much the priority of what I do. And I also farm, so I can always use the Geo-Leads to call people in the farm. I just started a couple of farms, so that's kind of new for me. I'm a newbie on that too, sort of.
No, I love that. One thing that you've talked about through a lot of your questions is follow-up and how you use follow-up systems. I'd love to know what daily follow-up habits separate top producers from struggling agents.
I think you have to just make it a priority, and you have to keep track of everything, because like I said, I think the stat is 75% of your business comes from your follow-up. That's a lot of your business. So if you're not doing it, you're missing out. And I hate to admit this on a podcast, but we've all done it, where we've gone to our client database and somebody slipped through the cracks, and you get them on the phone and they've already sold and listed and they're all happy. That happened to me twice last week. I am embarrassed to say that, but it's true. They slipped through the crack, and it was a point last year where I had just so many listings, and I felt buried, because it's me, and I missed out. And it's a very hard reminder that you need to go back and do that. So I just always say to people, or anybody, myself, anybody, you have to go back and you have to follow up, because if you're going to make these calls, what's the point if they're going to fall through? So I make that a priority in the morning, because I know that that's got to be done. Because whatever they tell you, if somebody tells you they're a year out, they're really 6 months out. So you need to get on it. You can't wait a year. I've heard so many agents say that in the past, like, oh, they said they're a year out, I'll give them a call in 8 months. No. They need to see you from now until then. You don't wait until then, because 10 other agents have called them already, or their neighbor or somebody, talks in their ear. So I think the follow-up has to be just priority every day. There is no way around that. And if you don't do it today, then you better double down tomorrow and make sure you're up to speed on whoever needs to be done. So whether you keep a paper, or I know people use spreadsheets, my CRM tells me. I will say I do if I get a lead out of RedX, I do transfer it right into my my CRM, because I don't trust myself to remember, and I put it in my paper planner as well, because I don't want anybody slipping through the cracks anymore. My ego can't take it. So I don't want to lose business.
No, that's fair. I get that. I'd love to know a little bit about what your follow-up looks like. I know you mentioned, you want people to see you more than just in a year or in 8 months when you follow up with them. And I know there's so many different ways to work with the follow-up. I mean, RedX has the system with Ad Builder where you can do social media leads. There's postcards, there's texts, there's emails, there's leaving random gifts. I'd love to know what your strategy looks like most commonly.
Okay, so what I've figured out recently is everybody communicates differently. I ask people at their listing appointment, how do you like to communicate? Some people are callers, some people are texters, some people are emailers, some people are not on social media. So what I do is, when I enter them in my CRM, it's usually a phone call. We've already talked or something. But if, say, there's somebody that I've called 5 or 6 times and left a voicemail, I got to switch it up. and I tried this a couple of weeks ago, and I don't know what was magical about this Friday, but Friday afternoon seems to be a good time. But I noticed a couple of people I had left, 6 times, which is like, could be a year and a half, 2 years. I've left voicemails, and I started texting, and I got responses. So I switch it up. So I keep track of how I communicated with that person. And sometimes people, sometimes you get a hard bounce or somebody opts out. Well, if they opt out, I'm going to still call them because you know what? They gave me their phone number. So if I can't email them, then I'll call them or I'll text them, and then I'll try video text sometimes. I don't utilize social media too much to reach out to people, but it's something that I'm going to be doing a little differently moving forward. But I think you do have to switch it up because everybody's different and people are always texting. So, even if you say, hey, I was thinking about you, I hope you're having a great day. If you have any questions about the market, let me know. Sometimes they'll just respond, thank you, but it's a response. So it counts. That's a contact for the day. I got human contact. So that's kind of how I do it. I don't have a very set, rigid system. I just see how they are responding. Are they reading are they opening up my newsletter? How are they doing it? And I just switch it up all the time to see what works. And it's random. I'm sorry, but it's random.
No, I love that because people are different. So trying different ways to be able to reach out. And I'm sure that variety also decreases like annoyance that people may feel if they're like, why is this person calling me for the 8th time this week or something like that? Having a variety, I'm sure, is helpful.
Or voicemails that are full, you got to leave a text. Hey, I tried to call you a couple of times. Your voicemail is full. I hope you're doing well. Give me a call sometime. That's it. They know you're a real estate agent. They know you don't have to always ask, do you want to buy or sell? People are tired of that, I think. It's kind of stale. You got to go at it a different way.
I'd also love to know, you've been pretty candid about call reluctance. What's your strategy for pushing through hesitation on tough days? I know you talked about bribing yourself and saying, okay, I won't do recent expireds, I'll do older expireds, but
right. That's good, bribe. So I've had that a lot lately. When I'm not as busy as I'd like to be, I get in my own head. And that's the biggest problem. And I know from my friends and people, because I think what works best for me is if I'm just not wanting to do it, I'll take a very small chunk and I'll say, okay, I'm going to call 5 people that I've done business with that I know and I know like me. And I'm just going to call them and say, hello, have a good day. How are you? What's going on in your life? I'm not going to talk about real estate. I've already done business with them. They know what I do. And it's usually a very easy conversation. So I'll pick an easy conversation and I'll say to myself, call 5 of these people. That's it. And I'll take this is silly, but I'll take a Post-it note and I'll put 5 little lines on it. And after I make each call, I'll cross it off. It might take 10 minutes. People might answer. It might take 20 minutes. It might take an hour. But it's a non-confrontational call and it's an easy call and it's usually a positive call. And sometimes it leads to more business, even though it's somebody you've done business with, but it just takes the edge off. And then I'll give myself a break. I'll go outside, or I'll go do something or, 10 minutes, I'll give myself a break and I'll see how I feel. And then I'll go, okay, you did it. You can do 5 more. And then that usually breaks the pattern. But again, like I said, if I'm really having a hard time, I'm not going to make a hard call. I'm not going to do that to myself because I don't know about other people, but it takes me a while when I'm on the phone, no matter how, even though I've been doing this my whole career, my first 3 calls are not the best. So it takes me a little bit to get warmed up. So by the time you've done that, maybe once or twice, and even if you still can't deal with it, you've done 10 calls. That's not bad. There are agents that don't make 10 calls a week. So, I think that's how it works for me to kind of get me out of my own little funk if that happens. I don't know, it works for me.
I love that. I love that. I feel like many agents are unsure how to push through or sometimes try to avoid rather than starting with smaller tasks and working their way up. So I really love that strategy.
Yeah. And genuinely, people are nice. They're not I think that's a big problem too, is everybody thinks that they're bugging people. You're not bugging them if they need something. And most of them at some point will need something.
It's
And
true.
if you've been, think about it. If you've been, it's happened to me so many times where I've called people and left messages and I'm just like, oh my God, is this person even alive? There's no response. They're not opening the emails. They're not answering. And then you call one day and they pick up, oh, how are you? I've been meaning to call you. It's just they weren't ready. It's nothing personal. It's nothing against you, but you stay in front of them and then they pick up the phone and you go, wow, that was easy, and I think we play games in our heads a lot, and it's mostly not true. It's just not true.
If an agent feels stuck in a rut, what's the first thing that they should do?
Ooh. When I get in a rut, I'm usually in some form of coaching, and we have a fabulous staff here. I mean, I can call the owner of our company or the CEO and say, listen, I'm just not right. Talk me off the ledge. I think it's good to talk to someone that's in the field even and just say, hey, I'm really having a hard time. Can you help me work through this? Or what am I doing wrong? Or outsider looking in, what are you seeing? Because they know, especially if you work with people or if you have a coach, sometimes you just have to vent and say, look, I'm having a rough time. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't like the way my business is. And it's okay, but that's how you get past it. If you stuff it in and keep it to yourself, you may not come out of it as quickly. And, getting out of it quickly is better than hovering for 3 months and not doing anything. And I think that's why a lot of people go out of the business, is because they don't know what to do or they don't have a good support system. I mean, I think everybody should somewhat be in some kind of coaching or some kind of mastermind group. Every brokerage has something, do something, but find your people as far as who you can go to and they'll help you, and it happens to me all the time. Sometimes I call my friends. I'm like, I can't do this job anymore. I'm out. I'm done. I'm going away. I'm never coming back and blah, blah, blah. And, it just, sometimes you just need to vent it to get it out of your system. And then maybe someone will say, hey, why don't you try this? Why don't you just do this? Because I think we all try to do 500 things at once and then we're overwhelmed and we're not good at any one thing. And we, in this business and any sales, you get a lot kind of forced down your throat. So I think you have to pick and choose what works for you, but definitely a mentor or a friend or anybody in sales feels the same way. It doesn't have to be real estate. It's all the same gig. It's just a different product. So I think that's probably what I would do.
Very true, very true. And on the note of you saying sometimes it's better to just try something rather than stay in a rut for the 3 months, but also not trying to overload yourself with all of that work. How do you continue to improve your systems without overcomplicating them or making things more complicated than they need to be?
Okay, you said my magical word. I overcomplicate things. That's my guilty confession. I am famous for that. I'm famous for that. That's all I'm going to say. But I am aware of it. So what I'm doing now is I am looking at my systems because that is my weakness. And I think that comes from my previous businesses where I'm juggling 50 million things in my head at once. And that's just how I operate. I can handle a lot at once, but that doesn't necessarily make my day go easily. So I'm currently in the process of taking one system at a time and really honing in on it and trying to simplify it. I don't have checklists and things like that. I want to do that. So that's what I'm working on now, because I don't want to have to reinvent the wheel in my head over and over and over, because I'm trying to increase my price point and I'm trying to increase my production. Okay, I want to sell, 50 plus houses this year. And if your brain is scrambled, and mine is a little bit sometimes, I can manage it. I've done it up till this point, but I want to streamline it and get the system. So I'm taking, literally last week, I looked at my seller system and I wrote everything down at night. and I wrote the whole process down of what I do. And now I'm in the process of tweaking it to turning it into, here's what you need to do on a listing appointment so that I don't miss anything. Like when I'm sitting in front of somebody, it's okay to have a checklist and say, oh, we need to talk about solar. Oh, we need to talk about, what happens if this happens. It's okay to do that. And it just makes it easier for you. So that's kind of where I'm at with that. And I'm going to, then I started working on the buyer process. I don't really do a lot of buyers. So that's my process for that is just all over the place.
But it's getting there.
It's getting there. It's just changing. But I guess what I don't do anymore is I don't go to a seminar and watch somebody else's system and come home and try to replicate it. I'll take a little piece of it, but that's their system. It's not my system, and it's never going to work for me. And I know that. But if you can just take a little piece and say, you know what, I like that. And that's what I learned. Actually, one thing that clicked last week on one of the RedX classes was, you have to be in front of somebody 7 times before they realize that you're the expert in the area. Because I just started farming, and there's that's something I pulled from that seminar, and it helped me feel better about the farming that I'm doing because I'm not getting any response yet. Well, I've only been doing it a month. What would I expect? Did I expect something different? Yeah. But now I realize, because I'm listening to all these other people who have done it, say it does take a little bit, be patient, so that farming system now is going to be a little different because I need to make sure I get 7 touches over the next 7 months. And that made me feel better. One little thing made me feel better. And now I have action plan. So I think taking each thing and doing it to completion as well, instead of having 12 different things going on at once. And I'm also famous for that, like trying to tweak a million different things at once. And then I'm not effective at any one given thing. So this is real discipline for me. It's hard for me, but it's working and it feels good and I'm happier. So, I went on a listing appointment yesterday and I had my list and I went through it and I didn't forget, a couple of things that I may have. And it was great. And I felt better when I got home. I was more organized. I knew exactly what to do as far as the follow-up. So things like that help. So I think for me, and probably most people, one thing at a time, do it well, and then move on. And don't try to reinvent the wheel every day.
I love this. I feel like you've given us so many gems. Before we wrap up, I'd love to know, is there any advice or anything you think our listeners should know that I haven't asked you?
There's a lot. I mean, it's different for everybody, but I think you just have to know what you're willing to do. As far as lead gen, I mean, let's just face it. It's what you need to do. If you're going to be in this business, you have to talk to people every single day. You have to be okay with that. And you have to generate new business. So pick 2 or 3 things that you like or test them out. Maybe you do like to door knock. Maybe you like social media. Maybe you want to pay for leads. It doesn't matter. Just do it. Do something. Pick 2 or 3 things and stick with it and give it an ample amount of time to see if it works. It doesn't always work in a day. It doesn't always work in a week. So my personal rule is 90 days minimum. So if we're at 90 days and something's hovering and it's just, I don't like it, and I might give it another month or 2, but give it a chance and see what happens and track it and see what's working for you. If 2 or of the 4 are working, double down on that. That's where you're going to get it, and then dabble with the rest and give the rest a chance. But if something works, why wouldn't you proceed with it and give it a chance and realize that it will happen as long as you are consistent? And nobody likes the consistency word, but I don't like it, but it's true. And if you want, predictable income and predictable business, being consistent will eliminate that whole emotion. It'll go away.
I love it. If our listeners want to follow up with you or reach out to you, do you have a social media or a landing page or something like that people can go to reach out to you?
I am, and I'm on Facebook and Instagram, LinkedIn. That's it. But they can call me. I have no problem. I'm all over the RedX Facebook page, so I've gotten a couple of calls from people there, and we've gone back and forth, and I've done a couple of referrals, which is wonderful. It's a great page, and I really feel like everybody on it we're not in competition with each other, and I don't see other people as competition anyway, but I feel like everybody on that page is so raw and honest, and they really write the truth. Like, hey, this is what I'm doing, and it's not just general. They give details. So if anybody's on there, I'm there all the time, you know that, and anybody can call me or reach out. I'm happy to speak with anybody because we learn from each other. It doesn't matter if you're a new agent or a seasoned agent. I learn from the new agents all the time because they're way smarter than me with certain things. And that's cool. It's fine.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Christina. It has been awesome. And thank you to everybody listening. And we look forward to talking with you guys next week.
Thank you. My pleasure.